Living in a rural area has its perks: peace, privacy, and a sense of safety. I loved our isolated farmhouse, surrounded by miles of fields and forest. But one summer night, I discovered that isolation can also be terrifying. My parents were out of town for a weekend getaway, leaving me to look after the house and our 2 dogs. I spent the evening watching movies in the living room. The windows were open to let in the cool night breeze. The dogs, Max and Bella, were unusually restless, pacing around and barking at nothing. Around midnight, I decided to go to bed. I locked the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. The dogs followed me to my room upstairs. Just as I was drifting off, I heard a faint tapping sound. I sat up, straining to listen. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from downstairs. I grabbed a baseball bat from my closet and slowly descended the stairs. The house was eerily silent except for the tapping, which seemed to be coming from the kitchen. I flipped on the light, and the tapping stopped abruptly. The kitchen was empty. I checked the windows and doors again, all securely locked. Feeling unnerved, I returned to my bedroom, double-checking that my window was locked as well. I told myself it was just the house settling, or perhaps a tree branch tapping against the window. As I climbed back into bed, I glanced at the window and froze. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale, gaunt face staring directly at me. The eyes were hollow and lifeless, the mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. I screamed, scrambling backwards. Max and Bella barked furiously, jumping up and pawing at the window. The face disappeared, and I rushed to turn on all the lights. I called 911. My voice was shaking as I described what I had seen. The operator assured me that officers were on their way. I waited downstairs, clutching the baseball bat, the dogs by my side. Every shadow seemed to move, and every creak made me jump. When the police arrived, they searched the property but found no sign of anyone. They told me it was probably a prank, maybe a neighbor trying to scare me. But we had no close neighbors, and no one should have been able to get onto the property without the dogs alerting me. The officers left, promising to keep an eye on the area. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the face again. The next night, I was determined to stay awake and catch whoever was tormenting me. I sat in the living room with the dogs at my feet and the lights dimmed. Midnight came and went with no sign of the face. I started to relax, thinking maybe it had been a one-time thing. Then, around 2 a.m., the tapping started again. This time, it was coming from the living room window. I held my breath, gripping the bat tightly. Slowly, I turned to face the window. There it was, the same pale, twisted face, staring at me with those hollow eyes. I stood up, my legs were shaking. I was terrified. The face remained still, just inches from the glass. I took a step forward and the face began to move, sliding along the window pane. I realized with horror that it wasn't just a face, it was an entire figure, pressed flat against the glass, its limbs contorted in impossible angles. I backed away, and the figure followed, moving to the next window and the next, always keeping its eyes on me. I ran upstairs, the dogs following, and locked myself in the bathroom. I could hear the tapping on the bathroom window now, relentless and mocking. I called the police again, but by the time they arrived, the figure was gone. They searched the property again, finding nothing. The next morning, my parents returned and I told them everything. They were skeptical, thinking it was just my imagination. But I know what I saw. That twisted figure, that haunting face. I'll never forget it. It was supposed to be a quiet night in. My roommate Sarah had gone to visit her family for the weekend, leaving me alone in our small apartment. I relished the solitude, planning to binge-watch my favorite series and order takeout. The evening passed uneventfully. I sprawled on the couch, got lost in the show. The only sounds were the dialogue from the TV and the occasional car passing by outside. Around 11 p.m., I decided to call it a night. I turned off the TV and headed to the kitchen to grab a glass of water before bed. As I filled the glass, I noticed something odd out of the corner of my eye. The back door, which led to a small yard, was slightly open. I was sure I had locked it earlier. My pulse quickened as I walked over and closed it. I tried to brush it off, but a nagging feeling of unease settled in. I checked all the windows and doors again, making sure everything was locked. Satisfied, I went to my bedroom and got into bed, scrolling through my phone to distract myself. Just as I was starting to relax, I heard a faint rustling sound. It seemed to be coming from the living room. I held my breath, straining to hear. The rustling stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I waited, but the sound didn't return. I convinced myself it was nothing, perhaps a draft or the neighbors. I put my phone down and tried to sleep, but a sudden creak from the hallway startled me. I listened intently. It was footsteps, soft and deliberate, and they were approaching my bedroom door. Fear paralyzed me. I reached for my phone, but my hand trembled so badly I could barely grip it. The footsteps stopped just outside my door. I held my breath, waiting for the intruder to make a move. Minutes passed. Each second felt like an eternity. Then, the doorknob turned slowly. I stifled a scream, clutching the blankets to my chest. The door creaked open and a tall, shadowy figure stood in the doorway. I panicked, trying to process what I was seeing. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I mustered the courage to speak. My voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure remained silent, its outline blending with the darkness. I reached for the lamp on my nightstand. My fingers were fumbling with the switch. As light flooded the room, the figure vanished, leaving the door slightly open. I leapt out of bed, heart racing, and ran to the door. The hallway was empty. The apartment was eerily silent. I checked the locks again, all secure. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My voice was shaking as I explained what had happened. The police arrived quickly, searching the apartment thoroughly. They found no sign of forced entry, no intruder. They assured me it was probably a nightmare, but I knew it was real. I didn't sleep at all that night, too afraid to close my eyes. The next day I called Sarah and told her everything. She was concerned but skeptical, suggesting I might have been dreaming. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the memory of that shadowy figure. That night I stayed with a friend, too scared to be alone in the apartment. When I returned the next day, everything seemed normal. Days passed without incident and I started to feel safe again, but the memory still haunted me. A week later, I found a note slipped under my door. It read, "I'm always watching." My blood ran cold. I called the police again, but they couldn't do much with no evidence of a crime. They advised me to stay vigilant and keep my doors and windows locked. I moved out shortly after, unable to live with the constant fear. The experience has left a mark on me, and I'm still afraid when I'm alone. To this day, I still feel like I'm being watched. Living alone in the city had always been a dream of mine. I finally made it happen after landing a job that paid well enough to afford a small but cozy apartment downtown. The area was bustling with life, and I loved the independence and freedom that came with my new living situation. It was a Friday night, and my plans for the weekend were simple: stay in, catch up on some work, and enjoy a few horror movies. I had always been a fan of scary movies and loved the adrenaline rush they gave me. Little did I know I was about to experience a horror far beyond any movie. I spent the early part of the evening working on a project for my job. The hum of my laptop and the distant sounds of the city were the only noises breaking the silence of my apartment. By 9 p.m., I decided to take a break and order some takeout. The local Thai place was my favorite, and they delivered quickly. The food arrived, and I settled on the couch, ready to start my horror movie marathon. I chose a classic slasher film to kick things off, hoping it would set the perfect eerie tone for the night. As the movie played, I was engrossed in the plot, the tension building with each scene. Suddenly, I heard a faint knock on my door. Pausing the movie, I strained to listen. Another knock. This time louder and more insistent. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was unusual for anyone to visit without notice. Hesitant, I got up and approached the door, peering through the peephole. To my surprise, no one was there. Thinking it was just kids playing a prank, I shrugged it off and went back to my movie. The knocking didn't return, and I quickly forgot about it as I got absorbed in the film. By the time the credits rolled, it was nearing midnight. I decided to watch one more movie before calling it a night. Halfway through the second movie, I heard another noise, this time coming from the kitchen. It sounded like something metallic clattering to the floor. I paused the movie and listened. Silence. My heart started to race. I wasn't easily scared, but being alone and hearing strange noises wasn't exactly comforting. Grabbing my phone, I cautiously made my way to the kitchen. Everything seemed normal. The utensils were in place and nothing appeared out of the ordinary. I checked the locks on the windows and doors. Everything was secure. Feeling a bit foolish, I returned to the living room. Convincing myself it was just a neighbor making noise, it was after all an apartment, and noise from neighbors wasn't unusual. I resumed the movie, trying to shake off the unease. Just as I started to relax, I heard it again. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper coming from the hallway leading to my bedroom. This time, my fear was undeniable. The whispering was faint, but it was definitely there. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it someone trying to mess with me? Had someone broken in? I grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly walked towards the hallway. The whispering got louder as I approached, and I could make out a few words that sent chills down my spine. I'm here. I reached my bedroom door, which was slightly open. The whispering stopped abruptly. I pushed the door open, my knife ready. The room was empty. I checked the closet and under the bed, finding nothing. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the panic rising. I decided to call the police. The operator was calm and reassuring, promising to send officers to check the apartment. I locked myself in the bathroom, knife still in hand, and waited. The minutes felt like hours, but finally, I heard a knock at the door. The police had arrived. They did a thorough search of the apartment but found no signs of forced entry or any indication that someone had been inside. They suggested it might have been my neighbors making noise or some kids with a speaker playing a prank. They left, advising me to call again if anything else happened. Feeling a bit more secure but still on edge, I decided to sleep with the lights on. I double-checked all the locks and windows once more before finally lying down. Despite my exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. Every creak and groan of the building made me jump. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off. My sleep was fitful, filled with strange and unsettling dreams. I woke up around 6 a.m., the early morning light filtering through the curtains. I felt a sense of relief that the night was over. As I got out of bed, I noticed something on my bedside table that made my blood run cold. There was a small, folded piece of paper that hadn't been there the night before. I unfolded it. The message was simple but terrifying. I'll be back. My mind raced. How had someone gotten into my apartment without me noticing? The police had checked everything. I felt violated and unsafe in my own home. I called the police again and showed them the note. They took it seriously this time, promising to increase patrols in the area. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I installed additional locks and even set up a few cheap security cameras around the apartment. I stopped watching horror movies and tried to keep myself occupied with work and friends. A week passed without incident, and I started to think maybe it had been a prank after all. But that sense of security was shattered one night when I came home late from work. As I unlocked the door, I noticed a faint, unpleasant smell, like something rotting. I entered the apartment, and the smell grew stronger. It seemed to be coming from the living room. When I turned on the light, I saw it, a small dead bird lying in the middle of the floor. Its neck was twisted at an unnatural angle, and its feathers were scattered around. There was another note beside the bird. This one read, "I'm closer than you think." I stumbled back, my mind reeling. I called the police once more, barely able to explain what had happened through my panic. They arrived quickly, taking the bird and the note as evidence. They assured me they were doing everything they could to find out who was behind this. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend, explaining the situation. They were sympathetic and let me crash on their couch for a few days. I contacted my landlord and arranged to break my lease, explaining that I no longer felt safe. The day I went back to the apartment to pack up my belongings was the most terrifying of all. I arrived in the afternoon, hoping the daylight would make the task easier. As I packed, I kept hearing faint noises, footsteps, whispers, things being moved. At one point, I went to the bathroom and found the mirror fogged up, as if someone had just taken a shower. Written in the condensation were the words, "You can't hide." I backed out of the bathroom, heart racing, and called my friend to come help me pack. They arrived within minutes, and together we quickly gathered my things. As we were leaving, I noticed something that I hadn't seen before. In the corner of the living room, partially hidden behind a bookshelf, was a small, old-looking door. It was locked, and I had never paid much attention to it, assuming it was just a utility closet. Curiosity got the better of me. I found the key in a drawer and unlocked the door. It creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. My friend and I exchanged a nervous glance, but decided to investigate. We descended the stairs, our footsteps echoing in the confined space. At the bottom, we found a small, dimly lit room. It was filled with old furniture covered in dust. But what caught our attention was the wall covered in photographs. Photographs of me. They dated back to when I first moved in, showing me in various parts of the apartment, even sleeping. In the center of the wall was a large, recent photo of me sitting on the couch watching TV. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone had been living down here watching me the entire time. My friend and I hurried back upstairs and called the police again. When they arrived, they searched the basement thoroughly. They found evidence that someone had been living there recently. A makeshift bed, empty food containers, and more disturbing photos. It was clear that whoever had been there had been watching me closely, tracking my every move. The police assured me they would do everything in their power to find the person responsible. They believed the intruder had left recently, possibly spooked by the increased police presence. Despite their reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I moved in with my friend temporarily and eventually found a new apartment in a different part of the city. It took a long time for me to feel safe again, and even now I'm always on edge, double-checking locks and windows. The experience left me traumatized, but it also made me more aware of my surroundings. I learned to trust my instincts and to take any sign of danger seriously. I still don't know who the unseen guest was, or why they chose to torment me. Despite the police's thorough investigation, they never found the intruder or made contact with me again. For all I know, the intruder could still be out there.